Peace and love. Peace and love. Why do I say peace and love? Right? It's customary to greet you in peace and in love when we meet. Um, Welcome to the very first podcast on very first podcast. So this podcast is called Sankofa 180. Sankofa simply means, when translated, it is not taboo to go back to the past and bring from the past what you have lost to this present moment. In many ways, we are our experiences, we are our memories. So where you are today is how you have gotten here based on what you have experienced. So if you have experienced life in a negative way, then in many ways your experiences to this point is seeing yourself in a negative light. Right? So for the very first episode, we're going to be talking about healing from trauma. And I am blessed and fortunate to have joining with me somebody I will not say met, but re-meet, because I believe that we have all met already, right?
Yes.
Nothing is new.
Yep.
Nothing at all is new. It's like we were having a conversation earlier. You were talking about, by the way, before I ever go, Solana, introduce yourself, my dear.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now Qualis Cloak Alciam, Iskotachi CISCM, Solana, Ishde Newaji, Lachlan Blue, Hugsmoiget Hiken Datsum Baga Axe, Simsian, Nooksack Mohawk Quint Dawawanuth, Beatrice Anderson, Chief Sam George, Chief Joe Ortiz, White Owl House of the Wolf, William Booth, Violet Atkinson, Chief Shakes, Ganhara Clan Dawawanuth, Timakochi Chante Tanaguz Nalak Solda, Lani Limina Utsu Alumiam Damgath Walwilwan. So I just stated my four Indian names: Salana, Ishdeneweji, Lachlan Blue, and Huxmoiget Hiken Dutson Bega Axe.
Wow.
And the I could go into the name meanings at a different time, but I just also wanted you to know what I said in the other languages. And I said, from the heart of the prairie to the heart of the ocean, the universe sings to my soul because of God. It will be done, so be it.
So be it. You
So,
know, I think that has to do with part of what we're going to talk about today, which is intergenerational trauma. Is you can trace your lineage, you can trace your name, you can trace your people. But
mhm,
for me, I can only it's like I can say Daniel, the son of Carl, the son
mhm,
of Clarence, the son of Johnny, and that's it. I have no more information pertaining to my family history or my name. There's a elder of or as it's called, Marcus Garvey. He stated this statement. He said that people without the knowledge of their
mm,
past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without a root. So if we don't know our history, if we
mhm.
don't know our origin, if we
Yes.
don't know our name, if we don't know our language,
Yep.
in many ways we're like a tree without a root.
Yep.
So that is what this program, what that word Sankofa means to me. It means to go back within my own consciousness and my people's consciousness and bring to this present moment the information what is there,
Mhm.
because no knowledge is never lost, right?
Yep.
It is just coming to a place where you can be present enough to handle it so that you may share.
Yes.
So I believe wholeheartedly that we, as I said, we are being reintroduced to each other, because I know you a long time, you
Yes.
know. And as I think back and I remember history, because I'm learning a lot about history, it's like we hear about how, whether we call it Indians, North American,
Mm,
real Americans, Amerindians, whatever, there's
yeah.
different names, and we learned your history. Your history is tied up in many ways with our history,
Mhm.
because we, in many ways, experience what would I call it, the negative attributes of man, the
Mhm.
greatness of man, and where one man think, where man in general think that we are separate. So we
Yep.
need to elevate one above the other.
Yep.
So I know a few weeks ago we were having a conversation pertaining to to, I think you shared then about your grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think you said that your history goes back to Alaska.
Yes.
All right. So, and you did share based on the, in many ways, what your people have gone through pertaining to your grandmother having, I think, how many children?
28.
28 children. Right.
Only 19 survived early childhood.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, right, and so that brings it to the conversation we're talking about intergenerational trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And how her legacy in many ways has been passed down through her lines and to her family members, her children, all the way down to us.
Yes.
Right. So, all right. So 28, 19 survived. Many of the population or people were wiped out based on different illnesses, which was brought on basically from persons from different countries.
Mm-hmm.
Right. How did your people heal? How did you heal?
That's a good question. So how I believe how my grandmother healed was being pregnant. The times that they were living through, right? Because she was born before the Queen got to annihilate the First Nations people in Canada. And so my great grandmother was one of the 7 founders of the island in Alaska that became the only Indian reservation. And so they were fleeing, they were refugees fleeing the Queen in BC, in British Columbia. And they landed on an island, and then it became Alaska later. Then it became the reservation later. And so the healing for my grandmother, I know, began with being pregnant, began with bringing life here. Because the strength that she was able to do that with also allowed her to protect them. So she wasn't allowed to speak any of her languages or songs to any of the kids. So my dad and my aunties and uncles, none of them got to learn, or she intentionally didn't share it with them to protect them. And then in the 1978 Indian Religious Freedom Act came to the US. Then in the 80s, she was able to gather children in the community together to share with them the songs and the dance and different language parts. And now the Tsimshian art and culture is thriving because of her and her sisters that brought the kids together in the community that were not their own, but they were children. So the offerings that she had, that she kept, that she cultivated and she kept, and I'm sure she worked on so many different ways to present and so many different ways to teach all these children. I think that did a lot of healing. At the same time, it really hurt, her children. It hurt my dad. It hurt my aunties and uncles to not know. So there's generations of being silent, and like you said, brother, we already know each other, like emotionally and spiritually, and mentally. Me and you, we already know each other. And so to be able to meet you in physical would be even better, right? It'd be even more, we can create even more.
Yes.
And so for my grandmother to have done that, even though she was protecting, she was hurting. She was hurting her children, even though she was protecting them. So then that the different generational traumas of resistance, of enmeshment, of enslavement, of being displaced, of torture, of just different themes of the generational traumas can certainly get misallocated. Like they'll land in us, and they'll land in our flesh in not a good way, because then what happens is when we feel resistance, we might not be resisting the right thing. We might be resisting the healing. So then when we want to be silent about something, we're not silent about the right thing. And when we want to give air, give life to things, sometimes we're not giving life and giving air to the right things because of all the generational traumas companioned, with not having something physical not having a language or a song or a dance or any kind of physical representation of that love, it can be confusing and it can stay confusing. And what happens during that time of confusion is even more like grabbing for displacement, even more grabbing for being silent, and even more like grabbing for the violence, and not understanding and not knowing, because there's not order. And so my journey here, since I was 1.5, I've been able to listen to my grandfathers and began to see the order that's here already, that Mother Earth has set for us, that our clan society has set for us, and the way our songs bring us back to order. So my journey here has been a lot of sifting and bringing order to all the different chaotic, generational, traumatic piles and crevices. And some of the things are frozen. A lot of the things are frozen in time. So there's aunties and uncles that, because they were so hurt by not having their mom speak to them and share with them the songs and the dances and the language, there's not an emotionality that they can express. They're actually unaware of some of the generational traumas that have impacted them and that are still impacting their choices and their families today.
All right. What I'm hearing is what I never had. I was born in a village, raised in a town, and grew up in a city. That's how I split my life. Like, yeah. So my first memories were more of a village setting. So that village was it's now called 9 Mile. Actually, that's the birthplace of Bob Marley, where reggae in many ways was born, right? So I run the same street where Bob Marley run up and down as a child.
Oh.
When I listen to you, is the importance, I think the word is Ubuntu or Ubuntu. I keep mixing the two up, right? Ubuntu, right? So it simply means I am because we are, where the entire village takes care of a child. So in many ways, the child did not have one parent, but he had the village as the parent. And that village itself put in protective factors to take care of that young soul, to teach the child about life. Like, for example, as I learn more about my culture, I start to learn a lot more things. Like, naming a child is a sacred thing. It was never the parent who named the child, it was always the elders. And the only way they name a child was after they inquire of the ancestors, right? What is important, even though I use the word ancestor, a lot of my people or people in many ways it's like you talk about ancestors, but you can't speak about ancestors, right? Because we have been cultured away from our history. We have been cultured away from our knowledge. So like when you said that your grandmother sing or the song, or people in many ways, I did not have that song because my grandmother, my great grandmother, my grandfather, their song was many ways lost based on what we have been through. But the good thing is that the song is never too far from us. Like, it's always within us. But the thing is, now you mentioned it earlier, you have to be at a place like a water, like a stream, where it's peaceful enough to go back and regain what you have missing.
Yes.
Right? So it is learning those songs which are still embedded in us. It's learning to heal from past experience so that we may share. It's like we may share each other's space without any negative energy or anything blocking, but pureness flowing from us. Right? So it's like we have experience, like I know there is a war. No, there's wars taking place all over this earth, right? There's always war. Like I hear about Hamas and the Jews. I hear about Ukraine and Russia. So there's always wars taking place. And I believe on a collective level that we have lost what it means to be alive, or humanity itself. we have lost our heart. And that in many ways, I remember bringing me back to this story, this thing I heard about. I'm not sure if you watch Wizard of Oz,
Yes,
many years ago, about the Tin Man who is searching for his heart because he feels empty without his heart. So we, in many ways, have lost our connectedness to our history, which is our heart,
yep,
and that is our heart song. So it's like as I rediscover myself, I start to relearn a lot of different things about myself and my people. So
hmm
the information is there,
yes,
right? Um, and then now, as I get a little older, I start to learn about epigenetics and all of these different things what are now affecting me on a cellular level. Like, what? How do you talk to somebody about epigenetics,
yes,
right? I saw a video you did with a lovely display of a pen with a paper wrapped around it, right?
yes,
About how epigenetics, it's like it binds with yourself.
yes,
And that in itself changes how you see life.
yes,
It's like earlier mentioned that we are our experiences and our memories. And
yes,
it's very easy to be lost in a memory. And some ways you can be lost in others' memories
yes,
because we inherit past memories and past pains.
yep,
So when we heal, we don't only heal on an individual level, but
hmm
we heal on a collective level.
yes,
Right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. It's absolutely true. And did you notice the part of the video so that if it's a piece of paper, right, then it's going to burn very fast. It might not last as long, and then you might forget about it. But once it catches that wood, that log, then it could burn for a long time. Then that means that that you're going to be acting out from that for a long time, or you very well can. And it's not always bad, right? It's not always bad. Some of it can be very, very regenerative, right? Some of it can be very, um, like a wildfire of healing. Burn up all the things that are not going well, that haven't been going well. Like let's just the spontaneousness of healing, can be just as impactful and just as fast as the pain was.
Mhm.
And it very well can heal generationally. The problem with people, sometimes when we start talking about healing, one of the problems is that people people think people think that we can talk our way to healing, like, oh, we're saying the right things, I just have to learn what to say. And it's not about that, right? Because no one talked you into being hurt. Like,
Mhm.
people didn't talk you into displacement. People didn't talk my ancestors into sterilization, or they didn't talk, my ancestors into moving, fleeing, coming to Fiji. They didn't talk them into any of these things. Everything was action oriented, and it was from initially from the emotionality, right? It was from the emotionality, the fact that trauma or pain or threat or destruction or genocide, all these things have happened um, because of the fear of the unknown, the ones who caused it, right? It was fear based, it was scarcity based. And when you do that to a people that don't live in fear, when you do that to a people that have clan society, that have like a natural order, like what you're speaking from and what you're striving to get back, um, it just doesn't last. It doesn't last because the fact that we're here right now, Daniel, is proof that love wins genocide, that healing um, is contagious. And just like you said, it does transform collectively because we are all intra connected,
Mhm.
including Mother Earth, including how she regenerates, and including um, how she floods, when she creates these massive floods. So then there's hundreds of years of earth sediment that haven't been seen in hundreds of years, right?
Right.
These things, they haven't been physically felt in that long. And so sometimes it really is just a matter of either some water or some air, bringing something to present time just needs a little bit of water, a little bit of air. you know.
You know, a seed has everything it needs in order to basically a seed comes with everything what it needs. It
Yeah.
doesn't need anything else. All it needs is water and sun and dirt, right? But we are all seeds.
Yes.
So encoded in us is everything that the divines created for us, right?
Yeah.
It's just coming back into a place where at one point we never we
Mhm.
never knew pain in the particular level that we're experiencing today.
Yeah.
So a lot of the memories or different things were forced upon us,
Mhm.
right? It's like even when I think about a story what I heard, even back in the first, let me say this: the concept of race was created back in the 1800s. Before the 1800s, there were no race because we
Right.
are all one people,
Right.
right? We are all one. So one of the impact of slavery are the transatlantic shipment of bodies when
Mhm.
they used to throw so much of the bodies overboard that it changed the way of the sharks, the amount of flesh and different thing what my people what went through, right?
Mhm.
So we introduce a lot of things to mother and
Yeah.
change how it flows, because as I get a little, not little more knowledge, but I would say that I remember a little more. Um, we vibrate. A lot of things that we don't understand about ourselves is that we operate on frequency. It's
Yeah.
like it's like my let me say my dog. His name is Max, right?
Mhm.
Before I'm at least 50 meters or 100 meters away from the house, Max knows I'm coming.
Oh yeah.
He cannot hear me and he cannot see me, but he can
Yeah.
sense me,
Yeah.
right? So that
Yeah.
means that we operate more than the five senses, more than hearing, touching, feeling, smelling. We operate on different levels, right? So as you get back in frequency, because the earth, mother herself, vibrates on a particular frequency,
Yes.
right? So it's like as you begin to vibrate on the correct frequency, you start to heal everyone and things around you, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's like I know this word manifest comes in my head where a lot of person talking about manifesting this or manifesting that.
Yeah.
Your mind is the key to all this,
Mhm.
changing how you think.
Yes.
Now, it there's also this thing of it's called post-traumatic growth.
Mhm.
You can grow from past trauma. You
Mhm.
can learn how to experience life, because one of the realities what I've learned is is a song what I heard many years ago. Everybody dies, but not everybody lives.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
there's a lot of persons who are physically dead, spiritually dead,
Mhm.
mentally dead, what are just on autopilot,
Yes.
right? So it is coming back into a place where the first relationship you must start to reintroduce yourself to is you.
Mhm. Yes.
So think about that. So in many ways, we have to go back to the past. Like
Mhm.
I coin it this way: most of us are just broken, fragmented, based
Mm.
on what we have been through. So you find a whole bunch of persons inside of their own consciousness in the fetal position, right?
Yes.
Hiding away and allowing this avatar in order to experience life on their behalf. Because based on our past experience, our past memories, our past hurts, our past pain, we decide to stay in the dark,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
So the important thing is it's like a black hole, you know. A lot of us in many ways are within that black hole and nothing can come inside. The black hole, is one of the most powerful thing in nature.
Oh yeah.
It sucks everything.
Mhm.
So not even light can escape from the black hole.
Right.
So the only person who can take you from within that black hole is you.
Yes.
It is coming back into a relationship with self, where once you start to understand you start understand that you are not alone.
Yes.
So that is one of the lessons I had to learn was, one, despite everything that I've been through in my life, I am not alone. It's like as I learned that my people, my is always around me,
Mhm.
right? It's like you call it the singing.
Yeah.
Here you're right. For me, I call it the drum language. So I'm always hearing drums. Like that's one of the first language that I heard, and my people is associated with drumming. So I'm going back to my roots. So it's like when you start to rediscover self, then you start to rediscover history, your story, right?
Yes.
And in many ways, what our people went through on a collective level, and we're still here, it's
Mm-hmm.
only by the Most High, you know?
Yes. I love it. I wanted to I'm just gonna moving my
Sure.
computer around because I wanted to show you a little bit of a demonstration based
Mhm.
on what you're saying about water. Sorry about the mind, about the mind. And yeah, this won't take too long.
That's all right.
Okay. So that just you talked about the medicine wheels earlier.
Right.
What I like to do is I created this curriculum called Star Blanket Teachings. And the star it's a companion model curriculum. It's a companion model modality because the star is the medicine wheel, alchemy. And then the blanket is the Gush Halite, the Chilkat weaving. So the occupation of the star. And so I just wanted to show you the, I don't know if you can see that. So
Yeah.
the north, that's my, oops, wow, that's funny. So the mind is north, and that's air. I'm just going to label this. And then I just want to show you something because you said something that was like, ooh, that, yeah, I have to say, I have to tell you what I know and what I feel about this.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it'll help. Earth. Okay. So what happens is, okay, there. So the mind, right? And then the spirit and the water and the earth. So the mind, you said that we have to change our mind, change our thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm saying is that we are mostly water. So we're like, 3/4 water. And that's the emotionality. And the only element that can manipulate water is air. Right? It's the only, but that's the mind, right? So the mind has a lot of power over the water, right? But that's the problem. That's the problem is the mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
That there's too much mindfulness because you can't have that much air. You can't have that much air. Like you have to move it. You have to move it with the water. You have to move it with your fire, with your earth, like so that you feel it, so you could meet the people, so you could be with the white sage rose, so you can be with the medicines and with the food and with the teas. So we have to move it. But what happens is at some point, right, the pain and trauma happened that was felt. You felt it physically. So whether we were displaced or silenced or sterilized, or our food was taken, the Buffalo Nation were gone, damming the rivers to block the salmon, all the different things that they do with the food for the way we take care of ourselves. So this happened, and then that makes us think a certain way, right? When we get abused, when we get assaulted, when we get offended, it physically happens first, because people don't like, we don't get traumatized by a word that somebody said. We don't get traumatized. We don't get traumatized because somebody doesn't like us. It has to be a physical thing, right? For a trauma. And so then you think about it differently. Then you think about yourself differently. And then it affects, your spirit, because it isolates you, right? It makes you think that it's not happening to anyone else, or it's embarrassing, or it's shameful, or it's not in a good way. So then emotionally, maybe your water's boiling, like boiling mad or frozen cold. You don't know. And then round and round we go, because then after that emotionality takes over, you know, then it just keeps going around and around. And that's the cycle of suffering.
Mm.
It's round and round and round, because then pretty soon that all that frozen water, that emotionality, right now it's frozen. Now there's like 500 years of being silenced, and 500 years of, you know, being offended, and 500 years of not, of misinterpreting, you know, spirituality, or misinterpreting, you know, who your maker is, or misinterpreting your identity, you know. And then the emotionality, like then it's very easy to be raging mad, right? Then it's very easy to be depressed and anxiety ridden. And what happened, all we have to do is, so with all that frozen water, air is not going to move frozen water. You know, air is not going to do anything to boiling water. So what we have to start to thaw, we want to start to thaw all this frozen water, thaw the emotionality, thaw where it actually happened. We have to do a disruption, like you said, an epigenetic thing, and like just rely on the cellular level. And so, you know, burn some smoke, burn some sage, burn some sweetgrass, burn some medicine, or have some water. You know, do that prayer offering, eat that food, eat that traditional food, or feel that drum, you know, the Mother Earth drum beat, like whatever can help interrupt this cycle of suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Because then what happens is, once that disruption comes in, then it goes to, let's see, it's so weird doing it like this. So,
Sorry.
right. Then you go back to, that brings you back to the center. And in the center is where all that frozen water, it like, so it happens, right? That spark. And sometimes people will weep, or sometimes they'll start to feel something. And when you haven't felt emotions in such a long time, and there's been a lot of numbness and frozen, it can feel weird, it can feel different, but that's part of it. And so then that's when we rely on the glacier melt, on the snow at the top of the mountains, on what it looks like for, you know, layers of ice to melt, what it looks like for layers of ice to start to thaw and give us what we need. So then it goes to, how are we, like intellectually, when we get into these dialogues and these conversations about healing, then we want to bring order to it, right? We want to bring order to it. And then emotionally, there's just so many emotions that have never been spoken to or have never been practiced.
They
And
never have the language for it.
exactly. And then eventually what you want to do is, you want to give, so this happens. So then you say, okay, what did I notice? Like, what was the emotion? And you start giving it emotions, you know, and then you keep going back to center. Like, what are the emotions? What are some possibilities? And then how do we sustain that? Like, symbols, you know, all of our first tribal peoples, we always have some kind of symbol. Some of us have like form line, like this language art. Some of us have turquoise, or different beads, or different paddles, just different tribes to have different plants and different animals, and different ways that we symbolize human virtues. We symbolize human attributes that help life go forward, that help the people live, that help the people eat, that help the people have babies, like whatever that is. Like, there's always these beautiful symbols. And so then round and round we go, but now it's only regenerative. So now it looks more like a figure 8 here,
Mm-hmm.
instead of round and round and round. But there always has to be the honoring of the water, the honoring of how we're mostly water, just like mother,
Mm-hmm.
and how, like what her goal, you know, from the outside, right? Like, she's mostly salt water, And salt water is very regenerative. And when we cry, it's salty tears. Like when we sweat, it's salt water. Any of our bodily fluids from, coming outside of us is salty. So our blood is salty, our tears, our spit, everything is very salty. And that's the proof of life. And when you're crying, typically, right, like when you're weeping or when you're sweating, when you're making salt water, what you're saying and what you're thinking, right, in your mind,
Mhm.
making salt water, it's usually in a good way. There's no other way to, it's like, for some reason, when people are crying or sweating, there's not a lie. You can't lie. Like it's not, it's trickier to manipulate the mind. It's trickier when there's salt water going, then the mind is good, right? Because the salt water is regenerative. The spirit is good because the salt water is regenerative. The physical is good. And it's actually really good physically because of the detoxification, right? And then the emotionality, every time you'll see people when they're healing generational traumas, there might be really big weeping, really big tears that just don't stop. And
Yeah, the crying is just the healing of the soul.
yeah, and that's for all the, for the first 500 years of being silent. The first,
Mhm.
our ancestors, same as, yours, I'm sure all of our, like mine and your ancestors, I know for sure I can safely and humbly and sadly and radically say that they didn't get to cry enough, that there wasn't enough memorialization, that even if we sang, 5 memorial songs every day, it wouldn't be enough to honor everyone. And that if that doesn't make you sad, like if that doesn't make you cry,
Yeah,
then
I'm talking and I'm feeling it here.
yeah,
You know, it's like
that's the
it's
reality.
what most. It's like one of the root word for trauma is wound.
Yes. Yes.
Simply means an open wound.
Yes.
So as long as that wound is open, it will always be hurt. So it will
Exactly.
be always be pain. So the
Exactly.
important is going back to that place and healing the wound.
Yes.
So it's you're healing on a cellular level, you're healing on a physical for yourself and for your generation. It's
Yes.
like you don't pass that pain from you to the next generation,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So we stop it here. So
Yes.
that's why healing from trauma, intergeneration trauma, or trauma is so important, because until the healing takes place, there is no experience of life,
Yes.
because we'll always be seen through the lens of hurt and pain. And
Exactly.
in turn, we attract persons to us who are hurting.
Right.
So you mentioned also something what I love to talk about is plants.
Yes.
Plants are very important because you see, we now live in a world where everything is instant. So we want microwave food, we want quick this one, quick that, but
Yeah.
don't realize that our bodies require. It's like the divine create everything what we need to sustain.
Mhm.
And for me, healing from there are some persons who you can speak to, and speaking to them help heal trauma. But there's other persons who trauma is so deep that you require something in order to reach them. That
Yes.
goes back to the point where I'm trying to make about existing within the black hole.
Yes.
You can't talk to somebody, you can't talk to trauma, you can't tell the trauma to leave until you start to be able to see you. So
Mhm.
it's like a lot of persons don't have the ability to materialize in front of themselves. It's like when they look inside of the mirror, there is
Mhm.
no reflection, or the reflection they see is foreign to them,
Yep.
or the reflection they see is not safe.
Yep.
So I know that you are a part of AOS. Yeah. Tell us what AOS stands for.
Okay. AOS stands for Advocates of Sacred. And
Mhm.
AOS started in 2016 when I started training native doulas in Seattle. Um, I had experienced by that time 4 different extremely amazing, humbling, scary, petrifying births of my own children. 4 different ones, extremely different. And I was always a birth worker, but this time I wanted to get into the generational trauma effects and impacts of birthing in fear, of birthing in scarcity, of birthing through genocide, of birthing through all these things, and to help us get back to our own agency, to help us deliver and birth a person without being afraid, with with actually just partnering with that baby inside of you, just partnering with that star person inside of you, just partnering and honoring yourself. um it can be the most empowering thing, delivering a person, and it could also be the most uh awfulest, most scariest, traumatic thing ever. Because a lot of our black and brown flesh, our women, um, our Indian women, our African women, our African American, our Mexican, our our brown women have suffered so much sexual trauma. It's ridiculous. It's to the point of right now in 2023, there's a lot of uh, brown and black women who are not able to have a baby, are not able to reproduce. That's how traumatized we are as a human family. So
Yeah.
we don't even need to worry about birth control because we're already taking care of not having any children, let alone our relationship to it, right? And so I started Advocates of Sacred because I really felt like our and it was very controversial to say women at the time, right? Pregnant women. And so the language was around pregnant people. But it was for us to hopefully partner with ourselves as our own agency and partner with this baby inside of us and plan and prepare our bodies to carry the baby and plan and prepare our bodies to deliver this baby and also to breastfeed, and that breastfeeding heals physiologically sexual assault. Breastfeeding heals any sexual assault that your body has endured. And that's also another problem with brown and black mothers, is that they're not taught that. They're just taught, they're not even taught a lot of things anyways about their own bodies, about the emotionality of it, about how amazing and honorable it is to be able to do that. There's just a whole issue and array of things that we need education on, that we deserve information on, that with all respect and with all love and care, we deserve a lot more than what we're getting. So Advocates of Sacred started because babies are being born into fear. Babies are being born with too many birth outcomes. Babies are not being born. So yeah, so the Advocates of Sacred also has a canoe family, and yeah, we've pulled a few canoe journeys already, and this
What do you
last
mean by a canoe journey?
the canoe journey is a summer experience that involves over 100 canoes, like traditional native, indigenous, or other people's canoes. So there's been canoes from Japan and Hawaii, from New York, from different territories that have come to our canoe journeys in the Salish Sea, so right out of Washington State. And so my canoe family is Advocates of Sacred Canoe Family. And then the name of my canoe is Nagus Nalak Solda. But getting back to Advocates of Sacred, yes. And I wanted to also, I don't know if I'll do another demonstration, but when you were talking about the plants, Daniel, and you said that we're all a seed, right? I think you know this story, or maybe I could remind you of, it's a story from the Bible, and it's when the seeds are being planted,
Good
they're
soil.
planted to become bread, right? They're planted to become bread. And what happens is when the men are sleeping, while the men are sleeping at night, right? The wicked, the slithering snake comes and plants the seeds of the weeds for the corruption to start while the men are sleeping at night. While the men are like, why are the men sleeping at night? Why how come they don't just stay up all night? Like how come we're not protecting our women and children? So men wake up, right? That was the first,
Mhm.
but the Bible doesn't say that, but I'm saying it. Um,
Mhm.
But then, so while the men are sleeping, the seeds of the weeds get planted. So then when the men wake up, they're watering this the roots of the weed and the roots of the seed. And then underground, they're like everything is like super enmeshed and entangled. But the seed of the wheat is still the seed of the wheat. It's not going to become the root of the weed, no
That's right.
matter what, no matter how many roots are taken over. Yeah, it doesn't become it. But above ground, it looks normal. You can't tell you can't see the corruption. You can't see it. Looks so normal. And then poof, right? And then poof, now you can see the weed and the wheat growing above ground. And now you have an idea of what's happening underground, but you can't touch it. You can't touch it because then you'll pull out everything. Then you'll lose everything. You
I
cannot.
learned that recently.
You have to just be. You have to just be it. You have to just be who you're going to be and be what you're going to do. And people like that, Daniel, like me and you, they're very different kinds of people when you could not eat, when you cannot even be in the garden, but you're still the seed. When you cannot even be at the land, but you're still the seed. When you can be the star people and you're still the seed. They're called dreamers, and the dreamers are the ones that are connected, that remember there's more here. There's more to do here. There's more to share. There's more to heal. We just want to regenerate, creation mode, And so I just want to let you know, like, I'm here for you. And yeah, I'm excited to do this work with you.
Well, we are all on this journey. This, like I say, life is a journey of self-discovery.
Yes.
And there's 3 reasons why you meet someone. You meet someone for a reason, a season, or a lifetime.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just understanding path. And I think one of the very first book I read, because I had to learn based on my trauma, what I went through early. I never learned the way other children learn. So I actually learned a little later. So one of the first book I read poses this question. The name of the book was Victory Over the Darkness, right? And the very first question in the book is simply asked, who am I? Who are you? And that has been in many ways a journey for me of understanding who I am. And once you start to ask that question, it's funny enough how the brain works, it starts to answer it. And how everything around you work is nature itself teaches you about you. I remember, like for me, I live in Kingston, and Kingston is a very noisy place. There's always noise, or any city is very noisy. And so I had to go outside of Kingston to a little place up in the hills, right beside of a little stream, and allow myself to heal in peace. Right. So it is a process, and it's a journey, because there's a lot of persons out there like myself who are learning, and it's in many ways based on what we have gone through. It's a process it's like healing from trauma is not linear. It's not a straight thing. It's like mix up and blend and all of these different things, and you're going through all of the emotions. You're going like you 1 step forward, 10 step back, but it's continue to push through. It's like the will to survive. You know that there's something at the end, and you have to continue to go to it.
Yes.
And as for the next 5 minutes, so we're going to wrap up in 5 minutes. I've been having you on this for a while now. And what I have learned and what helped me very a lot was I don't like, there's a lot of words going around, plant medicines, drugs, all of these different things. Is within me, I believe that the creator put the knowledge within the plants, because there's something inside of us called the endocannabinoid system, right? Receptors. So certain plants actually binds to our brain, and it really helps us heal. So I was introduced to mushroom, a particular mushroom, a few years ago, when I was stuck within my own concept of self. What I mean by that, I was stuck in the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I was in stagnation. I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't pinpoint it. And when I did my first journey revealed in many ways a broken me. Because I saw three different distinct images. One of the first image what I saw in my journey was a broken mirror,
Mm-hmm.
right? It was a smash all over the place. And the second part was when I started to use a needle and thread in order to pull the pieces together. So I'm
Oh,
starting to sew the pieces back together.
wow.
That image represents me pulling me back together. So
Yes.
that's why I say to persons, it is not my job to heal you.
Yes.
I will guide you, I will give you the tools, but it's self who heals self.
Yes.
Because who knows you better than you? The
Right.
problem is you were never introduced to yourself,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And also in that journey, it allowed me to understand what it means for somebody to be disassociated,
Mm-hmm.
right? A lot of us feel it's like I can touch my skin,
Yeah.
but my skin don't feel real to me. It's like somebody else's skin. So
Yeah.
that dissociation where I cannot touch the feelings, like somebody said, boy, you know, I love you, but you can't receive love because you never experienced love.
Yes.
So it's like learning to live anew in a world where you have never been exposed to.
Yep.
So there is within it the divine in his wisdom has put different plants, different ways out there where persons can help heal themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But the sad reality, what I must talk about here, is that there are so many people out there doing it for profit, you
Yes.
know, and the dangers of being misguided.
Yep.
You can only guide somebody to where you have been.
Yep. Yes. Exactly.
And I will leave with that. I'm not sure if there's anything you want to touch with that as we wrap up, you
Oh,
know?
yeah. No, thank you. Thank you for bringing that in. That's absolutely true. Is and that's the problem with a lot of Western medicine and Western modalities is that when we talk about trauma, the licensed practitioners, the clinical psychologists, those people, um, it's traumatic for them, number one, to even get the licensures. It's traumatic for them to
It's
even go
true.
to school and go through all that, on top of them not being um, offered any real healing, right? They got to go to school and learn and memorize and rote memory and do all these things, right? But there's it's the same thing. Like, it's always true that you cannot talk your way to healing. It's always true that you felt the trauma, so you have to feel, right? You have to feel the emotionality. You have to feel what it's like to give air to certain things. Not everything, because you can give air to a lot of things, it doesn't matter. But when you give air to something that's alive, when you share your breath with somebody that's alive, when you share your breath to somebody that's living, then boom, like there goes the induction of healing, right? You might see happy tears, you might feel goosebumps, you might feel comforted, right? And then you could feel your heart rate go a little bit more gently. And then you could maybe think of a song later on because you felt so good and you start singing to yourself, right? Like that's the healing. The healing is a feeling. It's the emotionality coupled with the mind, coupled with the spirit, right? It's all of it. Because you cannot just heal your words so that you only say the good things, right? You cannot just heal your mind. Like, the mindfulness is, I would just always caution people on that, because that's part of the problem. Because when Mother Earth, like her truth, it doesn't, you don't need to think about it. Like, you can see it. It's simple. It's the fruit doesn't want to be the flower, and the flower doesn't want to be the tree bark, acacia tree bark. The acacia tree bark doesn't want to be the lion's roar. The lion's roar doesn't want to be the devil's club root. All these things, they don't want to be nothing else. They just want to do and be what they are fully, so that we can learn from those things.
Authentic.
And so we can, you know, I I always see that as the mastery of relationship is to be able to draw a line, is to be able to draw, to differentiate, and then fill it up if you want to, and then share it if you want to, and just um, create that remember when, and to begin that healing. And just thank you so much for bringing all these relatives and our grandmothers in here today. And thank you for allowing me to demonstrate a little bit. It's kind of tricky. I have to get better at like doing it with the
It's all right, man. Everything happened the way it's supposed to happen. That's what I'm looking like.
Thank you so much, Daniel.
All right. Thank you so much for being my very first guest.
Yes.
And I know that this is a part of our journey.
Yes.
And I look forward towards the road that we will chat. I'm going to use the word chad together. Chad doesn't mean we walk together. All right.
Tried.
All right. So for everyone else, thank you for participating and listening to us on this very first Sankofa 180. We have to, in many ways, go back to what is missing.
Yes.
And bring it to the spirit present moment, because mother requires of it.
Yes.
Because we have to heal, in turn help heal her, because we are the ones who is destroying everything around us.
Yes.
So we have to take control of it. Let us break the cycle, that the cycle doesn't continue. At the end of the day, we are one people, one family. And I want to say, the Jamaican national motto is out of many, one people, but I want to change it. I want to say, out of many, we are one. So out of one, we are many.
Yeah.
All right. So Hotep.
I love that. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Daniel. I love that.
Yeah.